Well, my version of it is classical pop. I had so many influences growing up. I grew up on R&B and soul music and country music and pop music. I mean, that was my and opera came into my life about midway. 13 years old. So by the time I got to opera, I was noticing uh, a lot of similarities. Cool thing about opera was the fact that it and country music, which is my other favorite genre, are both they both tell stories. And the cool thing about music that tells a story is it takes you on a journey. Where a country song, love and loss, all the typical stereotypes. Opera's the same thing. It's all love and loss, and usually at the end, the heroine checks out. you know, and most of these songs, and that happens in a lot of country songs too. But
Were you surprised that someone with your interest in this style of music would become so popular and that like people across the country would totally embrace your style?
I was. I mean, I just, I was inspired to get on the show when I saw a YouTube clip when I was in North Carolina singing at a wedding. Because I had given up on music. I wasn't going to be a singer, but I'd sing at my friends' weddings. Went out to North Carolina. Somebody sent me a YouTube clip. I see Paul Potts sing on Britain's Got Talent, and it was the first time in my mind. Of course, two things happened that year that just blew me away. One, this aria comes out of nowhere. This aria that had inspired me to love opera and sing it my whole life is back on the forefront. Paul sings Nessun Dorma. Then, a month later, Luciano Pavarotti died, and he was my idol. He was my mentor. He was the whole reason he's the guy I wanted to be like when I grew up. A lot of people have, sports stars. Somebody wants to be Michael Jordan. I couldn't jump that high, but I could sing a little bit, and so, I did it for a couple of reasons. One, I saw that this was an avenue to get back into music, and yeah, I didn't necessarily go into the show to sing opera, but I could, and I saw that as an avenue to get onto the show. And with the audience in their way of sort of embracing it, I think what happens on these shows, whether it's Idol or anything else, is that the person who shows that they want it the most tends to win. And a lot of people think it's about so and so is emotional and they're crying and stuff like that, and they have this big sob story. It wasn't really that. I mean, you've got to have the talent, but more or less you have to have the conviction, because if you don't have that, like that want to win. It's like I'll liken it to American Idol and Carrie Underwood, who really inspired me. The year that I tried out for American Idol, the same year she did, in the same place she did, but I didn't make the show. It just wasn't my time. And one of the big jokes was, would you have rather have won America's Got Talent or lost to Carrie Underwood on American Idol? And I'm like, I would have rather won America's Got Talent. But I think the audience from day one knew how bad I wanted it. How I was doing this not just for myself, but for my friends and my family, and in particular, my mother, who had inspired me my entire life, and my family that believed in me, and my friends. I mean, it was a different circumstance. I grew up in a small town. I was this big, fat, interracial kid that no one knew what to make of anywhere. And it happened all the way through school, even here at Mizzou. People were just like, who is this guy? He sure is fun. Everybody wanted to be around you, but, they couldn't specify it. It's like, or classify it. But you had this big guy with this big voice, and, everything about me was big. My personality, I like to tell big jokes. Small jokes aren't any fun. But on the show, I think that came out a little bit too. I was on the show. I was a little more nervous, and I think to a lot of people, it's probably a little bit. A lot of people recognize themselves, I think, and sort of my story. And everybody's got a great love for their family. Everybody's got a dream that they want to pursue. A lot of people grew up poor, and this was a way for me just to be to show America what I could do. And then when I hit the big note, it woke a lot of people up, and they started. I've gotten letters from all over the world of people who say I never listened to opera, before you sang that aria, before you sang Nessun Dorma. And and I changed it up a little bit on the show. I went a little bit pop, and I did a few things that a lot of people didn't agree with. But at the same time, it was my goal to not necessarily introduce the world to opera as much as it was to introduce them to one aria.
Which was?
Which was Nessun Dorma, Puccini's. I mean, the song, the aria changed my life, and I think it ended up changing a lot of other people's lives too, especially a lot of kids that I've spoken to, and people who just normally wouldn't have gone out and bought a classical CD have gone out and bought mine.